I'm still joined by Yariv Oppenheimer, project director of the Two States Coalition and former general director of Peace Now. And we're joined now by Jeremy Saltan, a political consultant for Naftali Bennett of the Yamina Party. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with me this hour. Jeremy, I want to begin with you. We know following the last round of elections, which was just in April, Prime Minister Netanyahu there struggled to form a coalition. It didn't work out. That's why we're here. How concerned are you of the left-wing bloc's future this time around?
I'm actually not concerned at all. That's a great, question to open with. Despite what we saw in the last polls, it's my feeling that the right bloc is going to have over 61 without needing Lieberman. It's quite clear Gantz has no pathway to becoming prime minister. Besides the Democratic Union and Labor, no one else has endorsed his candidacy for prime minister. At best, he's able to somehow convince the joint list to go ahead and say, we'll recommend you for the president and be a placeholder until the Haredim come and replace them for the formation of the government. But that's also only if Lieberman also goes in. To have Lieberman with Meretz at the same time is also very difficult coalition. Lapid with the Haredim together is a different. Basically, I don't see any scenario where Gantz is the prime minister. I also think that if we go back to previous years, I remember when Tzipi Livni was the one winning the polls, and she was the largest party in 2009. I remember in 2015 when Bougie Herzog was leading the polls in 2015. In April, Benny Gantz was getting more seats than Likud. In each example, Netanyahu and the right wing came out in droves, and ended up bringing a victory of the right.
Except
I believe there's a 61.
The last election, this was not the result. The last election, Netanyahu didn't succeed to form a government, and this is why we are here. So it's not happening all the time. And I think that Gantz is going to be very difficult for him. But if there will be 61 seats that will be against Netanyahu, and this include Lieberman as well, and we saw that Lieberman and Blue and White going together, so there is a good chance that Netanyahu will not be the one to form a government.
Right.
And once Gantz will
I don't see that scenario playing out. I think Likud, Yamina, UTJ, and Shas together get 61 or more. I'm saying without Lieberman. Last time they had 60. Because of Lieberman. So you're
very pessimistic for the future of Israel.
Well, I know that's your own personal opinion. We're all democracy. I know we are, but we'll go out and the voters will make a decision starting in about 12 hours. But what I do think we're going to have here is...
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Don't you think that if this will be the case, then Netanyahu will have a very, very narrow coalition? He will be a very, very weak prime minister that will have to give all its partners everything, including things that maybe you and Israeli think that it's too to the right, too extreme to the right. If Otzma Yehudit will get inside,
they're not getting in.
I don't know, but
you don't believe they are.
People,
I don't believe they are.
Even people from your party to see a prime minister that has such a narrow coalition, such a small coalition, I see it as a very risky thing for the future of Israel, because he can be blackmailed by everyone. And if you put his investigation and the things like that, so my question for you is whether your party is going to give Netanyahu the keys to go out of jail or not to get into jail, and to get some kind of immunity in return of, for example, having the territories, the West Bank, to Israel.
So I'll respond to the immunity thing, but first, I think it's important to say that, again, Gantz, if he is somehow able to make this deal, how is Lapid and the Haredim going to be? Look, Gantz is also going to be with a 61 narrow coalition. It doesn't work that way. I know that's the Gantz talking point.
He can have a coalition with the Likud without Netanyahu.
Gantz had a great event last week where Noah Tishby interviewed him. I wanted Noah Tishby to interview me. The thing is, I don't get to decide what other people do with their time. There's no way that Gantz can decide what's happening in Likud. Likud decides who their leader is, and that's Prime Minister Netanyahu. I can answer the immunity. Listen, my own, personal interactions with the prime minister will leave, for not an election discussion, because I don't think that is something that the viewers care much about. What I do think the viewers do care about is the immunity question, which you asked me. And what our position is, and I think this is an important thing to say, we are against immunity law. However, there is a thing. Yes, no, but that's.
It's about the idea of giving Netanyahu immunity,
right now,
therefore he will not be
for sure.
Sent to
right now there is a law that's on the books. We didn't pass it, Netanyahu didn't pass it. that says there is a certain path that you take to go ahead and, if you're going to ask for immunity, what the Knesset is going to do.
You can
involves
vote
the Knesset committee.
Knesset, whether your party will vote in favor of immunity.
I'm happy to answer the question if I have the opportunity to do so. So again, there is a process that is in place, as you know, Yariv. And what is going to happen is when we find out, because we still don't know, we're before the hearing, what it is that is left of the cases against the prime minister. Is it going to include bribery? Is it going to be fraud? Is it going to just be breach of trust? The truth is we don't know. When we go ahead and see what the actual charges are, and this is assuming the prime minister does decide to go through the current pathway and say, I want immunity, only in a situation like that will we then go ahead and say, okay, we're going to examine this. Now, we're going to have balancing factors. We're not going ahead and saying blanketly we are against immunity no matter what. That is not our position.
When Ehud Olmert was under
we are saying we will balance the need of the country if we are, for instance, in the middle of a war with the South or the North. That's going to be something we're going to be considering when that comes up for a vote. We are also going to look at the difference.
Because when Ehud Olmert was the prime minister, even before the investigation ended,
yes,
our political camp, the ideological camp of the center left, made the decision to show Olmert the door and actually to force him to step down. And this was before. And we knew exactly that once we are doing it, there is a huge risk that Netanyahu will take into power. But we thought that to fight corruption is sometimes even more important than to fight for your ideology. And what I'm hearing from you today
came from inside the Kadima party. That wasn't Meretz that was going ahead and saying.
Of course, Meretz was in favor. Zahava Galon was one of the most critical
Meretz was not part of that
coalition.
Meretz was not part of the coalition at that time.
Before we back to our studio discussion now, and Jeremy, I would like to ask you about the point made by Yariv earlier, if in fact there is a chance of a coalition with the Likud and not Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
No. The next Likud leadership race is 2023. Unless Netanyahu resigns, and if there's anything we know about Netanyahu, he's not going to resign. There is no way to oust him from the leadership of the Likud.
I disagree. I think that if the dilemma will be third election or Netanyahu stepping down, people from the Likud and maybe people from Yemina will say, we don't want to take Israel for a third election. Therefore, we are doing a government, we are creating a coalition. Without Netanyahu, it's better for the Israeli future and the Israeli present than to stick with Netanyahu and to go for the third time to an election and to actually to make this country stopped for more than a year now.
So that would only happen if Gantz does not. So you're saying both Netanyahu and Gantz will both fail at forming a coalition, and it's going to be a free-for-all in what becomes the third option. Only then would Likud oust Netanyahu. So again, what you're doing is you're agreeing with me that the blue and white talking point that there's a possibility for Gantz to go to Likud without Netanyahu is just not going to happen.
I think there is a good chance that it will happen. If Netanyahu will not get the 61, the dilemma will be tomorrow evening.
Gentlemen,
election
will all be wiser in about 24 hours. Thank you very much, Yariv Oppenheimer.